1 minute.
All right, we are live. Look at that. The recording has started. We're live. All right, to the 16 of you waiting, welcome to the 2024 Spring Assembly. We're going to sit in the lobby here for about 5 minutes, wait for everyone to kind of file in. And while you're waiting, we have a couple questions. They're rhetorical because you can't respond. For those of you that don't want to answer my rhetorical questions to yourself in an empty room, we have a summer word scramble, and you can look through those. It's surprisingly hard. It took me about a minute to get the second one. I feel a little silly about that. Um, yeah, we get some activities for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's gonna be fun. Alicia, what do you think that second one is? Second one under ball.
Flower.
Flower. See,
Flower.
it took me a while to get that one. Were you looking at that too?
Yeah. And the third one is popsicle. Did you guess that?
I no, I didn't. I didn't get that far. Um, I mean the what's the next one? You got like um
I found sunshine if it makes you feel better. We can do
oh,
that one instead.
what's that fourth one though? It's gonna drive me mad. I mean the fifth one's a shoe and it's fun. But what's the fourth? It's like what do you do with Layla Hess? It's not the word. Um hmm. Oh my gosh, 28 people. We like doubled in the time since we went live. Welcome everyone. You get to listen to me rambling for the next 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Oh no, actually just 3 minutes. You get to listen to me ramble for about 3 minutes while we wait for the rest of you to file in. Glad we had a little bit of a waiting period because when we went live there was only 16 of you and now there's 28.
Yeah.
Feel free to answer our lovely rhetorical questions and look at our summer word scramble, which I am having a painfully difficult time on. I know you look like that and you're like, oh, that's for kindergartners. No, it's painfully hard. Um, there's fun, butterfly, um, polo.
Popsicle.
There's polo.
Ball.
You
Vacation.
got ball,
Picnic.
flower.
Lemonade. Shorts. Beach. Rainbow.
Oh, don't spoil it for
Swimming.
them. Yeah,
Sunshine.
yeah, that one's sunshine. What's lawn wet tarim? What's that?
Watermelon.
Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, you got kite. Oh, that one's just reversed. Okay, that's a little insulting. That one's sand. Saying the last one is sand. Sorry to spoil it for y'all. You'll never get the last one. That's insanely difficult. I'm still having a hard time on that fourth one though. What would you do for Layla Hess? It's not a word. It's not even reversed, is it? Is it? If someone else knows, we got two people sitting in the phone a friend lobby here. If one of you
Yeah.
knows, chime in because I'm dying here. Let's see. All right. 2 minutes, not getting the same amount of people coming in as we did at the beginning. That's probably for the best. Be a little bit of pressure if that
Yeah.
number ticks up to 50 and I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I got an audience of 50 people. Um, that's okay. It's not really pressure for me. It's pressure for our presenter, which I'm very excited to introduce once we get to 405. We got a really good one for you today.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good.
And trust me,
Oh,
everyone, you get used to the rambling.
yes, yeah, get used to the rambling. You have a whole other minute of it. For those of you waiting, oh, we lost someone, huh? They didn't want to hear me ramble anymore. For those of you waiting, can you please test out the chat? Go to Q&A and just ask a question. I want to see, it can be anything, we'll filter it.
Yeah.
Just ask a question and see if it actually works. Like, I'll say something in the chat. Tell me if you see
Yeah.
it. Because I can't see what you're saying in the chat, but I think I can see what you're saying in the Q&A. That's probably a good thing we should test, right? There we go.
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay, we got, do you think that Zeppelins should come back? Was the craziest, worst? Okay, that's an actual question. You got Wells. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Q&A works. I just keep in mind no one up here can see your chat, but we can see your Q&A. So yeah, if you want to type in Q&A, don't spam
Yeah.
threads. If you want to make a conversation thread that I can see, then you can. But I don't know how well your chat works. So whatever makes sense for y'all. Anyways, we are now at 4:05, so you don't have to listen to me talk about the word scramble anymore. I will never get the fourth one. I'm just resigning myself to that. If we can move on to the next slide, please.
By the way, we have a winner on the fourth Wordle. It's
Wait, what is it?
seashell.
Oh, come on.
Okay. So do we
Wow, good
want to
job, Lucia.
keep them? Yeah. Do we want to keep them waiting in anticipation for this slide?
Nah, we'll read this one off for them. All right, so for those of you
Yeah.
that were in our last assembly, we had someone named Molly Morris come in, and she is an author. Well, she got her book published, and well, I think that's what it means. And she's having a launch party for it. So if you want to go to the launch party for Annie LeBlanc is Not Dead Yet, and you live in sunny San Diego, California, then feel free to go to that. For those of you that can afford the airfare to San Diego, um, might be a fun summer plan for you. That being said, I think we're good to move on and introduce our speaker, main event. Alicia, would you like to introduce her?
Of course. So I'd like to introduce, with Brooks, of course, Michelle Zetlow. Michelle has worked in border control, focused on endangered animals that get smuggled into the country. She is a forensics officer and is now consulting in education. For fun, she volunteers at Lions, Tigers, and Bears, which is an animal sanctuary in San Diego. Please welcome, with open arms, Michelle Zetlow.
Hey, thanks for that intro. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up. Can you see that?
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. That in full view. So I'm a retired special agent with a federal agency called NOAA, which I'll talk a little bit more about that. I worked for NOAA for a total of 29 years, just under 30, in a variety of positions in the science side as well as the law enforcement side. So I'll talk to y'all a little bit about my career path and some of the work that I have done over the years and am continuing to do now. And I'm in San Diego where that book signing is going to be. So I wanted to be a marine biologist since I was about 7 years old. And so went on to study marine science and biology. It's where I got my undergraduate in University of Miami in Miami, Florida. During that time frame, I had opportunities to do some work study jobs. I took care of sea turtles for one semester. I took care of juvenile lemon sharks for one semester, and then worked 2 years in a marine toxicology lab. It was really good experience, and I'm sure y'all are going to head off to college or trade schools. And if you have an opportunity to do an internship or a work study job in the field that you're interested in studying, it's a great way to kind of test drive the bus and see if you're interested in that subject and get some good experience along the way for sure. So after I finished with university, I was able to get a job with NOAA at a laboratory in Miami, Florida that did oceanography work. NOAA stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and NOAA has many different offices. You may know them for the National Weather Service. There's the National Marine Fisheries Service, and a few other offices, one dealing with satellites and ocean and atmospheric research. So I got to go to sea on some of these large NOAA vessels a few times. Actually, I'm a marine biologist that gets seasick. It's a sad thing, but I dealt with it with some seasickness medication, which seemed to work. And we would put a 50-foot tower on the front end of that vessel and then go out and basically suck marine air and try and get a sense of where the air masses came from and what was in them. So I did that for about 6 years, and then I got tired of doing research. And so then I applied for and got a job working for the NOAA Fisheries Office of Law Enforcement, which is a very small drop in the NOAA bucket. enforcement agency's got about 160 people, officers and agents working for it. Started off in uniform for them for about a year on the West Coast, and then got a special agent job where you're in plain clothes, not in uniform, in San Diego, and that's where I finished up my career. And so the mission of NOAA enforcement is protect and preserve our nation's living marine resources. So that includes, conducting investigations of federal fisheries violations, as well as educating commercial fishermen about the federal fisheries regulations, which can sometimes be complicated, and educating the public about the different laws that protect different marine species. I affectionately called myself a NOAA fish cop. We've also had a variety of other nicknames associated with us, like whale warden, seal sheriff, and grouper trooper. But fish cop is my favorite, I would say. And so when you're doing law enforcement, you got to figure out where your jurisdiction is. Like, where do you do the work? Where do you have the authority? And so that is in federal waters for us, and that includes from 3 to 200 nautical miles offshore. That's considered our exclusive economic zone where our fisheries resources are. State waters are from 0 to 3 nautical miles. And then outside of 200 nautical miles is the high seas, kind of anything goes. And then we also have jurisdiction at ports of entry where commercial seafood comes into or goes out of the country. And that may be where you drive a car through a land border, like in San Diego or Texas or in Canada, or, Los Angeles International Airport or seaport where you're flying into the country. So some of the federal fisheries laws that I enforced include some that you may have heard of, including the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act. The Lacey Act is a federal wildlife trafficking law, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Magnuson-Stevens Act is a federal fisheries law that is primarily civil violations and deals with federal fisheries that we enforce in our jobs. And then you had criminal statutes such as smuggling, false statements, conspiracy, and others. So the job entails contacting commercial fishermen. Like you see the photo on the right here is 2 uniformed officers out at sea talking to this fisherman, checking his catch to make sure he's in compliance with laws and making sure he's got the proper permits that is required. And the photo of the left, you see a younger version of me at the commercial port of entry in San Diego. This truck driver is importing, it looks like sea urchin roe, and I'm inspecting the documents and making sure that what's in the boxes matches what is on the import documents. So some of the tools for enforcement in fisheries cases include VMS, which stands for Vessel Monitoring System. So if a lot of our federal fisheries have closed areas because some of the species aren't doing well, or they're only open for certain periods of time during the year. And so a vessel monitoring system, or VMS, is placed on top of the ship, and it's basically a tracker. So the federal government can sit at the computer, officers and agents, and check where certain vessels are fishing to make sure they're not fishing in a closed area. And they can, if they are, then they can contact them and interview them and check what they're catching and things like that. We also have marked patrol boats or tools that we use. We also utilize informants because I may be a commercial fisherman that's following all the rules and procedures and laws. And then this other guy that's docked next to me is landing stuff in the middle of the night illegally without any paperwork. And that really annoys me. So as an informant, I might go talk to a fish cop and say, hey, you need to go out and board this guy or see what he's doing because he's cheating and I'm not. We also have observers that go on to commercial fishing vessels, and they go out and take data and collect fish samples and document what's being caught at sea. And they can provide us in enforcement with some information that will help us along with our cases. And then, of course, you have the documents. Might contact a commercial fisherman at the dock after he returns from a fishing trip and look at his logbooks and see where he was fishing, what he's catching, and look at the landing receipt. Because when a commercial fisherman comes back to the dock, he sells his fish to a warehouse, and then he gets a landing receipt, which documents what he caught, which species, how much, who he sold it to, and how much he was paid for it. So all that's good information to look into. And then once we investigate a case, we have to write a case report, and then from there, make a determination of what happens next. Sometimes you don't have enough evidence for a violation. Maybe it's a small thing, and you might just give a fisherman a verbal or a written warning. You might pass the case off to a NOAA General Counsel's office, which is our civil side of the house, and they may issue a civil penalty. Or it may be a big, endangered species trafficking case where you would do a criminal prosecution, which may involve fines or jail time, or products might be abandoned to the government. So let's talk a little bit about the Marine Mammal Protection Act that protects all marine mammals in the ocean. And that may be simple a violation as, feeding a dolphin, which unfortunately happens a lot in Florida, chasing a whale, or as you can see in the photo on the right, somebody's trying to pet a whale, which is not legal, and that's considered harassment. Or you may have a more serious violation of somebody trying to lethally take an animal, like this photograph on the left of this female sea lion, California sea lion, who's been shot with a crossbow. The good news is she was able to make it on shore, and she was rescued by a marine mammal center. And a coworker of mine was the lead. Coworker of mine in Central California was the lead on that investigation, and we managed to do a couple of search warrants and interviews, and managed to locate the bad guy, and he got prosecuted for that criminal violation. Unfortunately, under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, there's only even killing an animal is a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. And if memory serves me correctly, in this case, the guy got a fine and probation, which is unfortunate, but we're still trying to educate judges that these are very important cases. Also under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, I wanted to mention dolphin safe labeling. I'm sure some of you on the call are canned tuna eaters. If you look at the Kirkland photo on the left, you could see the logo in the middle there is shows two dolphins there. That's the Dolphin Safe logo. And so let me explain the deal with that. So commercial fishermen, purse seiners often go out and fish for tuna, and oftentimes there is a symbiotic relationship where you have the dolphin are swimming on the surface of the water, they're air breathers, and then tuna are underneath. And so they'll take this giant net and wrap it around the school of dolphin in hopes of catching the tuna underneath. And so with US regulations, you're not allowed to, as a commercial fisherman, do any intentional encirclement. You can't intentionally wrap that net around a school of dolphins hoping to catch tuna. And you also can't kill or seriously injure any dolphins while you're doing that. And you got to fill out a bunch of forms whenever you catch tuna and certify that you didn't kill any animals or do any intentional sets on dolphins. And that's when you can get that dolphin safe label on the can of tuna. If you look on the top of any can, there should be a lot number that can be traced all the way back to the vessel that caught the fish, which may not have been a U.S. vessel. It may have been tuna that was imported from Central or South America or some other location. And you can note that non-dolphin safe tuna is allowed to be imported in the country. They just can't have that logo that you see on the Kirkland tuna there. I'm sure some of you have heard of the Endangered Species Act. That actually protects both plants and animals. And I have this photo of cactus on the left. Most species of cactus are endangered or threatened, and sea turtles as well are. All species are either endangered or threatened, but some people didn't know that it also covers plants. So one interesting case example I had regarding the Endangered Species Act deals with a fufu restaurant in the Los Angeles area in Santa Monica, and it was called The Hump. And we got a tip that The Hump was selling a whale meat or whale sushi at this restaurant. And so a couple of us gathered up our resources, did some interviews, And we got two ladies to do an undercover sushi dinner, basically. They sat at the table and they had some empty Ziploc bags and they ordered some sushi, including the word kujira, which is the Japanese word for whale. And they received a plate of that stuff and were able to take a sample and put it in the Ziploc bag and provided it to us agents. And we were able to take that to the NOAA Forensics Lab in South Carolina, and it was confirmed to be endangered sei whale. And it was a really good case. We ended up doing a search warrant on a Friday night. It was crazy and busy, and got a bunch of evidence, and were able to prove that they were in fact selling whale meat. Forensics helped with that. We had two sushi chefs that pled guilty to violations of the Endangered Species Act. They were each fined $5,000. And the guy that smuggled the whale meat into the country, he also got fined, and the business ended up paying a fine of like, I think it was like 27,500. So a really good four defendant case and a really good result. I mentioned the Lacey Act before. It is a powerful wildlife trafficking law. And basically, it states that we, the US, are not going to allow you to go to another nation and poach their resources and import it back into the country. So, for example, I'm not going to be a commercial fisherman and go down to Mexico and poach abalone or lobster out of season or without permits and then import that into the US. That would be a violation of Mexican law, and then crossing that international line, that international border into the US would trigger the Lacey Act violation. Another example would be if I was a fisherman in California and I didn't have a permit to fish for lobster, which is a state regulated species, and I caught 500 pounds of lobster and then I drove it over to Las Vegas and sold it to a casino. That would be a take in violation of California law, and then driving it across the state line and selling it would trigger the Lacey Act violation. And so another part of this law, the Lacey Act, deals with false labeling. And so if you submit a false record or label for any fish or wildlife or a document related to that, and then you try to import it into the country, that would be a federal violation. For example, if I was in Canada and got a bunch of crabs, like this photo you see, and I were to label the boxes rather than having them labeled as crabs, label them as plastics, and then put that on the import documents and try to import that into the US, that would be a false labeling violation under the Lacey Act. And to that end, I have, this is a case that I worked in San Diego County where this commercial abalone importer imported almost 150,000 pounds of abalone with Mexican invoices with an address that was totally bogus. This place in Mexico didn't exist. And we worked with the Mexican government, who helped to confirm that the address in the Mexican invoices didn't exist. And so this guy paid somebody in Mexico to gin up these invoices for like 20 bucks a piece because it wasn't legal product, right? And then he imported it in the US, and we were able to collect evidence for that and do some interviews. And he ended up paying a $500,000 fine and got a misdemeanor Lacey Act violation. So that was a pretty good result. Do you want to stop and see if there's any questions so far, or do you want me to keep plugging away?
We have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
None of them
Okay.
seem to be directly content related, but if you'd like to take a little bit of a Q&A break, that might be fun.
Sure.
All right, so let me
Okay.
filter through these. All right, would you ever like to go sailing? Like on a real sailing boat? It's got a mast and a sail and
I have. When I lived in Miami, I got to do a little bit of sailing. I had two friends that had sailboats.
oh, nice. How big were they?
Oh, geez. One was a catamaran that was probably, I don't know, 20 feet. And then another friend had one that was like, wasn't too big, maybe 20, 28 footer.
Nice. All right. Let's see here. I know there's one more. For those of you in the chat, if you want to ask a question, now is your time. to ask a question. I will
Yeah.
not be
Or we
coming
could do it
back
at
to
the
this
end as well, if any
to the very
leftovers.
end.
Yeah.
All right.
We do have one on nautical miles if we'd like
Already
to
answered that one.
ask that. Okay.
Yeah, I already covered that one. William Elliott. Yeah, I already covered that one. That's got covered in the comments. What is the craziest thing you've seen while working?
One time I was doing a border operation where we were checking cars coming into the country, and I had the driver get out and take his key and open up the trunk, and two sets of eyes were staring back at me. There were two people stuffed into the trunk. They were trying to bring, sneak two people from Mexico into the United States, and that scared the crap out of me. So I immediately, shut the door and called over the customs officer, and she was just like, "Okay, vamos, get out of the car." She was telling him in Spanish, and like this happened every day, all the time to her. But I was like, my heart rate was about 160, so that was pretty scary.
Yeah, definitely not the kind of wildlife you're expecting. You
Correct.
didn't expect humans.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
the weirdest animal you've found someone trying to smuggle into another country?
Well, I'm actually gonna get into that in a slide or two,
Okay. All right.
if that'll work.
Let's see. We got one more. What is the weirdest thing you've encountered? Is there anything that might be more weird than crazy? Like, what's the weirdest thing?
We got a tip on a guy at a house like 2 hours from the ocean in Riverside County, California, and allegedly had a sea turtle. And so I took a U.S. Fish and Wildlife agent out there with me, and we were thinking like, A, it's probably not true. B, if there's a turtle, it's probably some sort of freshwater snapping turtle that's not protected. So we knocked on the door and said, hey, identified ourselves with our badges and said, "Hey, this is who we are. We heard there was a sea turtle at your house. Is that true?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And we said, "Can we see it?" And he said, "Well, sure." And sure enough, he walks us into the dining room. There's a 300-gallon fish tank with a green sea turtle in there. And so that was crazy day. We ended up just sweet talking him into abandoning it to the government, and then he got to go to SeaWorld. His name was Crush, of course, from Nemo. And so we had to go to. It was in December, and had to go to Walmart and get like a plastic wreath carrier to put him in because he was flapping around. And it was definitely one of my more interesting cases.
That's insane. So he just willingly surrendered the turtle. There was no repercussions. He just
Well, not for
handed it
him. He
over?
was kind of watching it for somebody else, and so we had to do some backtracking, and
That just makes it worse.
yeah, it does.
Somebody else's turtle.
But at least Crush is living in a better, bigger tank now and has buddies to hang out with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We got one more, and then we'll save the remainder for final Q&A.
Okay.
So William Elliott says, "It seems like you do a good job during cases to get them give fines for abuse. But how does that process work? How does fining someone or getting them sentenced work? Do you have to go to court, or do you just file the case?"
We file the case. We may have to go to court, but once you do your case report and turn it into the attorney, it is their job to prosecute the case. And the fines and any criminal sentence is based on federal guidelines. So I have nothing to do with that.
Awesome. That makes sense. Be a shame if they made you do your own law work. You have to go into court and deal with these people. All right.
Continuing on.
Back to the slide.
So in this slide, we have talk a little bit about criminal cases. The photo on the left is dried abalone. There are 5 species of abalone, and 2 of them are endangered, white and black abalone. And on the photo on the right, you could see dried fish bladders that are taped up under the inside lining of the trunk of some dude's car. And why would you do that? So those dried fish bladders come from this fish called the totuaba. And this is about a 6-foot fish. And the fishermen catch this fish in Mexico, not for the meat, but for the swim bladder. And the swim bladder on these animals are actually worth a lot of money. And this is what this is that kind of crazy case thing you were asking about. So these are fresh swim bladders. The photo on the top, and dry, and when they're dried, they look like the photo on the bottom. And so they are only found in the Gulf of California, which is Mexican waters. They take these fresh bladders and they dry them out, and they're smuggled out of Mexico and shipped to China. And you can see these tubules run the full length of the bladder. They're quite large, and they are worth approximately $1,800 a piece in Mexico, $5,000 a piece in the United States, and once they're shipped to China, they can get about $10,000 a piece for them. They are allegedly used for medicinal purposes. They're also given to people of status like the mayor in Hong Kong or the police chief or things like that. And so people will smuggle them into the country and then take them up to LA and ship them out to China or Hong Kong. And unfortunately, there is that demand because they're worth a lot of money. Forensics plays a big role in those cases. You can tell by looking at the morphology or the physical nature of the bladder that it's Totoaba because it's very large. They can go 18 to 21 inches in length, and again, the tubule runs the full length of the swim bladder. Something that isn't Totoaba. There's other species that have bladders, but you can see these tubules are quite small in comparison, and the bladder itself is also small. But even if I had a case where it was large, you'd have those tubules, I would cut a piece off and send it to the NOAA Forensics Lab to confirm that it was in fact from that endangered fish. And we did have a pretty big case with this guy. He owned a furniture business in Los Angeles, and his sister in Hong Kong would send him furniture, which he would import into the US, and then he would go down to Mexico and smuggle dried abalone and sea cucumbers and these dried fish bladders out of Mexico and then ship them to his sister in Hong Kong to sell. So he had 37 pounds. That photo of the dried abalone was his. That was one occasion where he smuggled stuff in and got caught. And then within 6 months, he smuggled in 58 fresh Totoaba swim bladders. And he ended up paying the Mexican government $50,000 restitution. So that's money back for harming their nation's resources. And he had to pay a fine of about $15,000 to the U.S. government. And track records, and he had, smuggled in a couple $1 million worth of illegal seafood. So a pretty good case, kind of crazy, but got a good result out of it. Got prosecuted. Another case where forensics was important was this case where we had this commercial fisherman on a drift gill net vessel, which is a vessel that goes out to sea with a large net, like a tennis net that you would put in the water to try to catch shark and swordfish, specifically thresher shark, like this lower photo of this shark with a long tail. One of the crew members came up and talked to me and said, look, I was on this vessel working for this captain, and he would make me get in the water because dolphins and whale got caught, and he would give me a knife and make me, quote, sink the dolphin, like basically, kill it and make sure that it sinks down to the bottom of the ocean so that it wouldn't float up and nobody would find it. And he said, I was wearing this baseball cap, and you can take that as evidence. Maybe you can get something out of it because there's some blood on the front end of the cap. So you could see that stain in the close-up. And so we sent that off to the forensic lab. And they called back and said, by any chance, was there a dog on the boat? And we said, yeah, the captain actually had a bulldog. And it actually stunk, the captain. I think the bulldog might have peed on it. And so anyway, they came back with DNA from a dog, canine, as well as common dolphin DNA and fin whale. And so that, corroborated what this crew member said about this guy making him get in the water and do that to these animals. So that ended up being an interesting violation of the Marine Mammal Protection Act with the help of NOAA Forensics. We also do some shark fin investigations, which is pretty stinky work. Over the past few years, a few species have been listed as endangered, which is good for shark protection. We are at a warehouse in this photo outside of the port of Oakland, California, where some product was going through the U.S. and being transited out to China, I believe. And so we're all bent over trying to figure out if they are fins from protected or non-protected species. This lady in the red shirt is an Australian gal who is a world-renowned shark fin expert. And she basically could pick up a fin and say, blue shark, not protected, or this is a hammerhead and this is protected. Was trying to teach some of us how to identify them as well. And this is me in the cap and glasses, bent over trying to help, along with some other coworkers. So that was a pretty stinky day of work. And pretty much at the end of a day working with shark fins, you got to go and put your clothes into a garbage bag and immediately get them laundered. I retired from NOAA Office of Law Enforcement in March of 2020 when COVID started. 3 weeks later, I got picked up as a contract investigator for the EPA Criminal Investigation Division, helping them to deal with pesticide smuggling investigations. And so the EPA determined that quite a few pesticides were toxic to both humans and animals. And so they were banned from coming into the United States. And some of these products were smuggled into the US, and they are driven up to the marijuana grows in central and northern California and used for, I think the rats like to eat those marijuana plants. And so that's what it was used for. And some other pesticides were used in the bee industry because bees would get these little ectoparasites on them that would kill the hive. And apparently some of these pesticides from Mexico were able to kill them. And so when somebody would smuggle these products into the country, they would collect evidence and interview them, and they would seize their cell phones. And I would get the download of the cell phones, and I would review the phones and collect any evidence, photographic evidence, such as bottles of pesticides or pictures of cash or receipts of wire transactions, changing money, photos of marijuana plants is something I would see. I would save chats between the bad guy and any co-conspirators he or she may be working with. I would collect their call logs and their Google searches, because sometimes you would see something like what pesticides are illegal and stuff like that. I also had an opportunity sometimes to look through bank records or cell phone records to see who the bad guy was calling right before he or she crossed the border. And I'm still doing that type of work 30 hours a week. I am also a lecturer at the University of Colorado, Denver. I built an online class called Intro to Federal Environmental and Wildlife Laws, which I'm teaching right now, spending lots of time grading papers online, which is interesting. And in my spare time, as the intro said, I am a volunteer visit guide at a sanctuary called Lions, Tigers, and Bears in East San Diego County. This is me feeding a white tiger named Nola, who used to belong to an unknown rapper in Louisiana, and he wasn't treating her very nicely. And the tiger was seized, and then our owner went and rescued her and brought her back here. And we also have bears like this Himalayan black bear you see in the top left slide. His name is Teddy, munching on a pumpkin. And Suri and Julian, these two female lions that were at an unaccredited zoo in Louisiana. And I just want to finish up with the thought put into your head to consider possible careers in natural resources. There are a variety of federal agencies that do good natural resource work, such as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the agency that I worked for, which was NOAA Fisheries. These are all federal agencies that do good work, and I've worked with lots of folks from these different agencies, and they really enjoyed their jobs. And there are a variety of choices it doesn't have to be law enforcement, but you could work as a biologist. You could be a fisheries observer that go out to sea on commercial fishing vessels. Certainly, you could get into environmental policy or law enforcement. There's plenty of attorneys needed to interpret these federal wildlife laws. And NOAA actually has a uniformed corps that goes out and drives their research vessels, which is a really cool career. It's like a 20-year career. It's basically considered you get military privileges, and you go to sea for 2 years and drive the vessels, and then you get a land assignment for 3 years and you just go back and forth. I have a couple of friends that did that for a living. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And I put my personal email down in the lower left of the slide. If any of you are interested in talking further about natural resources offline, feel free to send me an email, and happy to bounce ideas about careers and things like that with you. And I will stop there.
All right. Well, on the subject of questions, we've got a ton for you.
Yep.
Alicia, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with Avali in the chat and then just move up. And I'm going to try to hit everyone. That's like a question we can ask. So, first
Okay.
off, what is the weirdest animal you found someone trying to smuggle into another country?
I mean, I would say those Totuava swim bladders is pretty weird.
That is really weird.
I mean, I get why once I learned about them, that they're worth, a crap ton of money, but yeah, it's weird.
Really weird one. That's like traditional Chinese medicine, the demand for parts of things always ends up creating like insane demand for random parts of animals. Like,
Right,
yeah.
and they're willing to pay a lot of money. We also see a lot of sea cucumber that comes from Mexico, that is smuggled into the country and then ends up in China and Hong Kong, and they're basically these dried things that look like poo, for lack of a better term. But I think they take them and they reconstitute them, and I think they stir fry them, and it's supposed to be good for your skin and things like that.
Wow, that's I have
Strange,
no words. No words.
right?
I mean, who would have thought? Dried sea cucumber, great for your skin,
Yeah.
guys. Don't violate any protection acts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, don't try it at home.
yeah, do not try this at home. What was, if you can answer, what was the worst thing you saw on the job?
I had a case that were in a short period of time, like a month or a month and a half, 4 dolphins were killed.
Oh,
They washed up and they had bullet holes in them, and I could never figure
Oh.
out who did it. We put out like I feel like a $5,000 reward, and just couldn't solve that case. So that really bothered me.
oh, that's really
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
Where was this?
Northern San Diego County, they washed up on shore, and maybe one case was in Orange County. But like dolphins, I mean, smart animals, they're beautiful. Why bother with them?
Yeah, I've heard they're brilliant. They're like they got their own language and everything. Which,
Right.
by the way, question of my own: is that true? Do they really have their own language, like to the level humans do, or is it?
I believe so. I mean, they, whales and dolphins are able to echolocate with a series of clicks, and I think they're able to communicate with each other that way.
Impressive. All right, we got. I'll do one of these since they're kind of pretty similar. What was your favorite case?
I mean, rescuing that sea turtle from that 300-gallon tank was a pretty cool day.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, I bet.
that was cool, especially because the person gave him up and he didn't try to like do
He did, and
anything.
these guys were pretty scary looking. And when we went to Walmart to get that wreath case to transport Crush, we came back
Yeah.
and there was the owner's friend was there, and he was kind of sketchy looking, but he was actually very sad because he had been an alcoholic and would sleep on this couch and watch Crush, and he'd become friends with Crush, and it was kind of a part of his support system. So
Oh.
I thought we were going to end up having to throw down with him, but he was just trying to say goodbye to him, and It was just an interesting day.
I could get him like a snapping turtle or something. Go fun. I don't even know. Is that legal to just take a snapping turtle?
I think it depends on the species. That's more a U.S. Fish and Wildlife question because they're more freshwater. So we deal
Yeah.
generally with marine species in NOAA.
Okay. Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Alicia, you want to cover the next one from Theodore?
Sure. What was the most things you saved in a day? Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yes, that is the exact one.
Oh gosh.
Most animals a like grab bag of 5,000 seahorses or something.
Yeah, but by the time they come across their border, they're dead and dried, as most of the species are. Dried seahorses, dried sea cucumbers, dried swim bladders. We had a case of 941 sea turtle eggs, so that was a sad day as well because that's 900 basically eggs that did make it to be little sea turtles.
Oh.
Hmm.
Were you able? Hey, did you catch the person who did that, or?
We did, and the husband and wife both did 6 months in jail, so that was good.
That's it? Just 6 months?
That's a good result for a wildlife case, actually.
Why are the results so like low on the sentencing ladder? I guess because it's
Well,
you know,
sometimes you also got to think about where you're at. In San Diego County, they do about 5,000 felonies a year. Um,
well,
so you have people smuggling, bad drugs and people into the country. And so wildlife, it is important, and the prosecutor does a really good job by providing a sentencing memo. We did a book report where we got a lot of information on how long and how much it costs to raise a sea turtle, you know, um, from a scientist who studied them for years. And so you got to sort of take it one day at a time, trying to educate the judges that these cases are important
yeah.
and it should be more than a slap on the wrist. So we were pretty happy with 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months, I mean, that's actual jail time. It's a lot better than just like, oh, here's a $5,000 fine. I mean,
Right.
make that back in a day. That's good. That's good to see. Some solid sentencing.
Right.
Okay. Jethro's got a interesting one. Could you legally own a sea turtle? Like, is there a permit for that sort of thing, or is that just no, that's never happening?
Um, if you were a scientist working for a university,
Mhm.
or if you're, SeaWorld's got sea turtles, you have for science or educational purposes, you would be able to get a permit from NOAA to do that. For
Nice.
you and I, no.
Yeah, you'd have to be
You
some sort
can't
of
even
organization.
have a sea turtle part. If I were to go to Mexico and find a sea turtle shell, it's illegal to import an endangered sea turtle part. And there was a fish and wildlife inspector that would take sea turtle boots off of people at the border, and they would
What
walk through the port of entry with socks on.
what are sea turtle boots?
They're boots made with, you
Oh,
know, sea turtle hide, basically. The flippers.
that seems impractical.
Yeah.
Just a status symbol?
I mean, they do it ostrich, alligator, crocodile boots. I mean, there's all kinds of.
Gosh.
Some people have leather boots, others have sea turtle boots.
Yeah, now they don't coming over the border. Um, one more thing from Jethro. I'm interested. What did they actually do with that bladder? Was it one of the things where they fry it like a sea cucumber, or did they grind it up into paste, or what did they do with those fish bladders?
I think some of them, like for a status symbol, I think if it's given to a police chief, they might just hang it on the wall. But I think they're
Oh,
used for special occasions. And I think they might be ground. I know seahorses are ground down. Um,
that's
Maybe it's broken up and stir fried.
man, it's a little grim.
Yeah,
It's got a sea
Yeah.
turtle bladder hanging off your wall, and people are gonna ask what. Well, I guess that's the point. People are gonna ask what the weird looking
right.
bladder thing you got on your wall. Alicia, you
Yeah.
want to take the next one from Liam?
Okay, so this is an interesting one in my mind. How big do the serious cases get? Do smugglers sell mostly to individual chefs and restaurants, or are larger companies often tangled in these dealings?
Really
I would
good
say
one.
both occur. I think the bigger cases, a coworker of mine on the East Coast, they had in China they were false labeling Vietnamese catfish as a higher dollar fish like grouper, and then smuggling it into the country and trying to sell it as a higher dollar fish. And this was hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of fish. And that I think that guy that was a Lacey Act violation, and he might have gotten over a year in jail. Might have been
My
1 to 3 years in
gosh.
jail.
Just because it was that big of a scam.
Yeah, and the value, if the value of the species that's smuggled or falsely labeled, as it goes up, then the sentencing guidelines for how much jail time you can have goes up.
Gosh, that's yeah. Some people can't
Yeah.
can't even label it properly. They gotta
Yeah.
Well, they do
violate
it
the
on
law.
purpose.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just seems like a bit of a dumb scam, you know.
Yeah.
Put it across the border as a higher dollar fish, and I don't
I
know.
Yeah.
agree.
Just seems like it'd be easier to sell it as something else once it gets there. You
Yeah.
know,
They do that too.
get an inroads with one of the chefs, not caught as easily that way. What is your favorite water animal?
I'm a big shark fan. I would like to see a whale shark in the wild someday.
Oh, nice. Have you
Yeah.
ever been
Since I
scuba
took
diving?
care of sharks when I was in college, I thought that was pretty cool. I've had the opportunity to be in the water and see some when I lived in Florida. It's kind of get a little bit scared, but it's like, wow, that's a really cool animal.
That is really cool. So you were in the water with sharks?
Yeah.
Nice. That's was it like in a controlled environment or were you kind of just out and
Um,
about?
Without, snorkeling, I've seen them a couple times. Generally, they're as scared of you as you are of them.
Yeah.
I mean, if they get close to you, usually you can just wave and they'll
Yeah.
just go in the other direction.
Yeah.
Now, if
I've
I saw a
seen
great white shark, I might be a little bit more scared.
that. I mean, if you saw a great white shark uh in the waters you patrol, I feel like it'd be a bit out of place, wouldn't it? You don't see those. Or no, that's you are on the West Coast, aren't you?
Yep, West Coast, they like to eat seals and sea lions. That's their primary food. So
Nice.
sometimes surfers will get bit because they're on the surfboard paddling, and so initially, if you're a shark from the bottom looking up, it might
Yeah.
look like a seal, and then oftentimes they'll just take a bite and then be like, "No, this isn't seal blubber," and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
And they took your arm off and they didn't even enjoy the taste.
Yeah, shark attacks are pretty infrequent on the West
Yeah,
Coast.
I have to
Yeah.
imagine. All right. Wow, we are out of questions, but we have one more. Oh no, never mind. There's a ton of questions. I just didn't refresh.
Yeah.
Alicia, would you like to take the
Yeah.
next one where I find the place where I was at?
Sure. Sure. This is from William Sitter. What kinds of animals do you find what kinds of people do you find with or buying exotic animals?
What do you mean? What kinds of people? I don't understand.
So like, for example, the
Yeah.
rapper who had the what was it, the white tiger. Who
Yeah.
is your most common culprit for collecting exotic animals? Like, is there a certain like group of people?
Yeah.
Like, is it all rappers or is it all politicians
Um,
or
Yeah. Or big company owners.
I mean, my experience working with fish and wildlife agents and, the stories that I hear volunteering at the sanctuary, um, you know, tigers are kind of status symbols. Sometimes, um, famous people will have them. The rapper, um, I think Justin Bieber got caught trying to import a monkey into the country from Germany. Um, you know, it could just be anybody. Sometimes drug guys will try to sneak a tiger into the country as a status symbol.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it must be satisfying busting those kind of people because they're up to no good on on other sides of things as well. So if you can get them on the animal, at least you got
Right,
them
and
on
they
something.
soon realize that, gosh, this thing is big and it's expensive to feed and it's dangerous. And,
Mhm.
Yeah.
if any of you watched the Tiger King series, I sort of fast forwarded through 4 episodes and then I couldn't deal with it anymore. I mean,
I mean, it just seems painful. I mean, the
yeah,
whole content subject is them essentially abusing tigers
right. I mean,
just by having them.
they're wild animals. You let nature stay in the wild.
How many cats and bears, or other big cats do you have at lions, tigers, and bears where you volunteer?
We have one mountain lion. We have 2 female lions, 1 male lion. We have
Mhm.
about 6 or 7 tigers. We have a couple of grizzly bears, a couple of black bears, and we have some livestock as well. Some horses, goats. We have a Penelope the pig. So a variety of different animals at the sanctuary. So if any of you make it out to San Diego County, please come check us out. We're a pretty cool place. It's different than the zoo. You don't wander around by yourself. You're given a tour by somebody like me or another visit guide and get to learn the animal stories.
Yeah. Anyway, the next question from Jack Shepard is, have you ever had an investigation that was dangerous? Like it wasn't just research and finding something, was there action and something happening?
Have you ever had to pull my gun on somebody? No. Um, as far as danger factor, I mean, when I would go and board commercial fishing vessels, they have knives and gaps and things like that on them, right? So there are weapons on board, but you either take a partner with you or you ask the skipper to come off the boat, talk to them on the dock, try to be reasonable and professional, and respectful with them. And so that's your best weapon is your mouth. So, treat them with respect and try to get the information you want. Try to do it in a safe environment. If your spidey sense goes off that this guy's in a really bad mood or whatever, like I'm not going to get hurt for fish, I would just leave. Come back another day. Come back with a couple of armed officers or whatever. So
Right. That's probably pretty good. You haven't ever had to pull your gun on anyone. You're
Yeah.
you're not looking quite for true beat cop police work. That's not what you went into
that's
it
right.
for.
A local cop deals with far more dangerous situations. You know, drug cops, more likely to find, guns in a house,
Yeah. Probably a
stuff
little
like
bit
that.
safer. You probably get a little bit of clientele overlap, but it's not
Right.
as regular. What are the requirements to work with the organizations you've worked with?
Um,
I assume educational is what Abilene meant.
Yeah.
I mean, generally they want a degree if you're going to be a special agent. We do hire officers that some that have degrees, some that don't. I think if you get some law enforcement experience, that's helpful. We definitely hire from the military. Um, Once you get hired, you go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is in Southern Georgia, and that's where you learn about um, the different laws you're going to enforce. You learn about search and seizure. You learn how to shoot a weapon. You learn how to do defensive tactics and handcuffing and ethics and report writing and all the things that constitute being a law enforcement officer.
Nice. It's a pretty solid program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The basic one I went to was 12 weeks.
So it's pretty solid. You guys get really good training for that.
Yeah, it's a lot of training for sure.
Do you have like continuing education where they send you back to go do like renew your firearm
You have to
certification or
qualify with your weapon 4 times a year. They do usually refresher training, defensive tactics, and like just a yearly training.
Mhm.
Yeah.
About once a year.
Makes sense. Keep everything updated.
Right.
Gosh, we have a ton of questions left.
Yeah, and we haven't even
Um,
started
I'm
on the
gonna,
ones pre-sent.
since we have like supposedly zero time left, I'm going
Yeah.
to try, and we're losing people. I'm going to cherry pick through some of these and
Okay.
just see like what's something we really haven't covered before and
Yeah.
is not going to be like depressing. Okay, here's a good one. I can combine these. How many cases, just a rough estimate, have you been in, and what percent of those do you think you won? Just rough estimate off the top of your head.
Oh, geez. Probably had, I don't know, maybe 200 cases, and that includes writing a written warning,
Oh.
to giving a $100 fine,
Mhm.
to as much as, $500,000 fine. So the bigger cases with large fines or jail time probably had less than 10.
Nice.
And because we're a small agency, I've helped with other cases. If there's a search warrant in San Francisco, everybody
Mhm.
in the West Coast is going. So I've definitely helped out on hundreds of cases.
Oh, that's definitely had a storied career. You get to say you got to. I mean, I guess it's those less than 10 big cases that really make your career, right? Like do you remember writing your $100 fines, or is this something you just do and forget about?
Yeah, it depends. Some of them you remember because that's
Mhm.
probably for somebody harassing a harbor seal on a beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, just some dumb tourist throwing rocks at the
Right,
seals.
right.
Um, okay. Alicia, would you like to find one?
Sure. One sec, I need to refresh mine too.
I should have done a shorter presentation to give time for more questions.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
all right. I think the amount of questions just shows how engaged people were with your presentation.
Okay.
That's good.
I keep getting new posts.
Gosh,
Okay,
they
so
just keep scrolling and just pick one.
yeah. What case did you feel like that the person who was abusing and smuggling an animal got what they deserved the most?
It's a good one.
The sea turtle case was really annoying. Um,
Yeah.
There's 900 little dead sea turtles, so we were definitely happy that the husband and wife both ended up doing jail time.
So it was a husband and wife duo. What did they even have those eggs for?
They were going to sell them.
Seriously? Well, for like traditional Chinese medicine, or is that trophies or
No, I think in some Hispanic communities, I think it's like a delicacy. We were not able to figure out who they were going to sell them to. They lawyered up immediately.
Yeah.
So
too bad? But they ended up going to jail and they stayed in jail for their as long as you
they
can get
did.
them in there for. Good.
Yeah.
That is good. Avali, that was a good question.
Yeah.
And for everyone likes to see the real bad guys go behind bars.
Mhm.
It's a good. I imagine that's a pretty cathartic feeling. You really did make the world that much better.
It is. I mean, sometimes it's good to hit somebody in their pocketbook, and sometimes the pocketbook doesn't is big enough so that a big fine isn't going to matter.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes a
Yeah.
big press release is the best tool because you're going to make them look bad in front of everybody. You're a company that's cheating or importing illegal fish species or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So do you find, and I've got a guess on the answer to this. Um, do you find more people buying dead sea animals, or do you find more people buying live sea animals when they're getting smuggled over? Is it the exotic pets, or is it just like the swim bladders? And which
I
one do you
mean,
see more of?
Yeah.
for fisheries purposes, fisheries cases, it's dead stuff. I mean, certainly my counterparts with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have had live monkeys smuggled across the border, parrots smuggled across the border. Definitely more live animals.
How do you even get a monkey across the border? That seems like a
Yeah.
I don't know.
logistical nightmare. Those things are demons.
They
They're
are.
like toddler-sized little demons.
I
Evil.
agree.
Yeah.
That would be challenging.
All I can think of is Abu from Aladdin.
My dad used to. I won't tangent too hard. I promise. My dad used to work with monkeys. He used to work at Emory, and with the lab monkeys. And the way he described them is furry toddler-sized demons. They were evil. Now some of them, I forget which ones they were. Some of them were really nice, but the actual monkeys, like the chimpanzees, completely just awful to deal with. And there was like this one colony of them that that all had HIV because that was back when you were doing like AIDS research.
Right.
Problem is the experiment didn't work. None of the monkeys contracted AIDS, which was the goal. They wanted them to get AIDS and then try to work on it and study it. No, they just all had healthy HIV virus running in their blood. So you had a whole colony, and since they were protected, you can't kill them. So you had to take care of the AIDS monkeys. It was really, it was, yeah, that was one of my favorite stories from him. And it was thanks to the regulations of some of the government organizations that you have to take care of them, and they live up to like 40 years. So
Yeah.
it was a good time.
Yeah.
Do you scuba dive?
I used to. I get headaches when I dive, and so I prefer to just snorkel.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What is the hardest case that you ever did? Like, I suppose technically challenging.
Um, we had a sea cucumber case that the bad guys, they got an attorney and they just, kept giving us documents, trying to bury us with documents. And so I had to go and analyze documents, and then they'd give me another set. And it was usually like invoices from Mexico, and then I had to analyze and translate them, and it just took a very long time. It was very time consuming, but it ended up, working out in the end. So they ended up getting charged,
Good.
paid a pretty hefty fine.
Good to hear. Like they got a
Yeah.
paper making you read all those documents. Do you speak Spanish?
I'm an
I-
intermediate Spanish
yeah.
speaker, not fluent.
Oh, nice. I was wondering because you translated from that one slide that was all in Spanish, and I was wondering. I was like, oh, that's probably a pretty helpful skill to be able to read it. Do you read it, write it, speak it, or comprehend it
I can do
verbally?
all of the above, and I encourage you all to try to get a second language under your belt somewhat. It would certainly
Yeah.
will make you more marketable in the job field.
Yeah.
To know. Have you? This seems to be a pretty popular one. I've seen it like 4 times now. I should probably ask it. Have you ever lost a case?
Oh yeah.
I would imagine.
I mean, losing a case could be, I do the investigation, I write the report, and then the attorney just says there's not enough evidence, so I'm going to decline the case. And one of our cases did go to trial, and the jury just found the gal not guilty. But she was a passenger in the car. The boyfriend was bringing in the stuff, and the attorney wanted to charge her as the passenger because I think she played a role, but
No
the
proof.
jury didn't believe that we met the burden of proof of evidence, and so she got off and was like, okay, go on to the next one.
Did you get the boyfriend?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good. What did he do? Did he get a fine or did he get jail time?
Actually, he got I think he did 10 months in jail.
Nice.
So
I
that
mean,
was good.
that's good. You're punishing the girlfriend too. She has to say her boyfriend's behind bars.
Right.
It's probably
Yeah.
good. You probably did enough damage with that. Um, such a horrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we want to get to some of the pre-asked questions, like the ones that were sent in before we run out of time?
yeah, let's do one more from here, and then if you want to pick like 2, just get 2 loaded up from that list, and we can ask those and call it a meeting. How's that sound?
Yeah.
All
Sure.
right. So when you learned Spanish, did you learn it for work or did you learn it prior to work?
I took 4 years in high school, a year in college, lived in Miami for 11 years. So Cubans in Miami talk very fast, so it was difficult.
Mhm.
It's easier for me to understand Mexican Spanish than Cuban Spanish, just because it's slow. They speak it slower.
That makes sense. All right. You got them, Alicia?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm randomly picking two because we have some really great questions. But the first one is, would you rather work at a laboratory or a crime scene, and why?
I'd rather be out in the field than in the lab. Just you're out. I've done lab work before, and it serves its purpose. But I'd rather be out in the field.
Yeah.
More fun.
And yeah. And the second one is, what has been the greatest memory from your job?
Just had the opportunity to work with some great people, uh, both investigators and prosecutors that work really hard to get cases across the finish line.
Awesome. It must be such a satisfying career, I imagine you.
It is, and
Take
hopefully people listening today will be like, "Wow, maybe I could do that." Get somehow into natural resources. As I said, it's law enforcement's not for everybody. I never thought
Mhm.
when I was on the science side of NOAA that I would be carrying a badge and a gun, but it was actually a way to get me back into the biology side. Because when I graduated and started working for NOAA, I was doing atmospheric chemistry, basically going to sea.
Oh,
So it was,
oh,
with law enforcement, I got back into biology and dealing with, sharks and marine mammals and fish and stuff like that.
well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you coming to CMSAS. I hope you had a good time getting to answer some of the
I
questions.
did had some
By the
great
looks of the
questions,
chat, it looks like they really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
and my email's on that last slide. And I can give it to you all again later if anybody wants to, ask any further questions about this field. I'm happy to answer them.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
All right. With that being said, do we have any other closing remarks? All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming to our final assembly of this school year. For those of you that stuck around, we still got 26 people. I think that includes us. 22
Yeah.
people watching. Thank you for sticking through it the whole way. I know some of you wanted to get your questions answered. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we got to as many of those as possible. And I really appreciate you coming.
And of course, thank you, Ms. Zetlow, for coming to CMA and presenting.
I appreciate you all having me. It's been a lot of fun. Had some great questions.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Michelle, wow, that was that was so great. I was messaging back and forth with Kathy, and Kathy's like, "Oh my gosh, I watched the entire thing. Michelle was amazing. The student moderators were amazing." And I said, "I know. I cannot believe how many questions we had, and just people were like exactly like Brooke said. People were so engaged, and I was even getting questions in our Teams chat, and people just saying like this was the most incredible presentation."
Oh, I'm glad everybody enjoyed it.
So thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, I just can't tell you how grateful we are that we had the opportunity to spend this time with you. And I think you inspired a lot of students today.
And like I said, feel free to pass my email out if
Yes,
anybody wants it. And I
will
saw
do.
Kathy with one of was it your sweatshirt with your logo on? If there's a website where I could buy a shirt, I'd love to do that. I could give her
Okay.
money, or I
Yeah.
could just tell me what
Yeah.
to do. I can
What
advertise for
size of
y'all.
sweatshirt? What size of sweatshirt would you need?
A t-shirt or
Okay.
sweatshirt, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll make sure that
I
we
can Apple
get to
Pay it,
it.
or I could write Kathy a check or write your
Yeah.
organization a check. Just let me know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. It's so nice to meet you. I
Likewise.
hope that our maybe our paths will cross. I might have to bug you in the future again to come back because you are so popular. But continue doing great work, and it sure was nice to meet you, Michelle. I hope you have a great rest of the week and a great summer.
To you as well. And Kathy said you guys might have a meeting down here.
Well, we have graduation next weekend.
And but is it for the students, or she made it sound like you, the employees were trying to have a meeting in the fall?
Maybe. Yeah, I do think there's something like that. I haven't been given many details, but I did hear something like that was in the works.
Yeah, so if,
So,
you know, if the opportunity arises where you guys make it down here for work or play,
yeah,
get in touch, please, and it'd be fun to see in person.
absolutely. Yeah, and something else that Kathy mentioned, which I thought was a fantastic idea, is Kathy and Christopher's, the founder of CMS, they are working on a regional gathering for San Diego. And Kathy brought up the lions, tigers, and bears. So that may be a place that we're able to, to bring families.
Oh,
The
yeah,
regional
that's right.
gatherings are fun. So that might be a fun place to hold one. So we have that on our list to look into.
But one other thing I was going to ask her about, or ask you, I know you guys teach forensics. I'd be curious to see what your syllabus looks like.
Yes. You know what? I'm going to make a note because I was supposed to send that to you. Kathy asked me and I forgot. I'm going to get on a call with Tammy, who created the course, in just a few minutes. So I will ask her for that syllabus so that I can send it to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I'd love for you to look at it. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And then give us feedback if you have any feedback.
Sure. All right, I'm going to go
Okay.
get a very large glass of water. I seem to have gone through all of mine.
And the dogs were so well behaved.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Have a great
All right.
afternoon, Michelle.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye.